Obinna lived in a small village with his mother, Amaka. They were very poor. Sometimes, Amaka would go hungry just so Obinna could eat a little food. One day, a rich stranger visited the village. He wore fine clothes and looked very important. He came to Obinna and made an offer that would change his life forever. The stranger said, "I will give you more money than you can imagine. You and your mother will never be poor again. But you must give me something very special in return." Obinna was curious. "What do I have to give?" he asked. The stranger smiled and said, "Your mother's life force." Obinna didn't fully understand but was desperate to escape poverty. Obinna thought about how his mother was always hungry and tired. He wanted to help her. He wanted to make her life better, so he agreed to the stranger's deal. Soon after, Obinna noticed something strange. His mother, Amaka, became very weak and sick. She could barely get out of bed. Day by day, Amaka grew worse. No matter what Obinna did, she did not get better. He began to worry and regret his decision. One sad morning, Obinna found his mother had passed away. He cried and cried, but she was gone. He knew the stranger had taken her life force. Just after his mother's death, something strange happened. Obinna started receiving a lot of money. People came to give him gifts, and suddenly, he was very rich. Obinna's house became big and beautiful. He had more food than he could ever eat, and he wore the finest clothes. But something was wrong. Even with all the money, Obinna didn't feel happy. His house felt cold and lonely without his mother. One night, Obinna had a strange dream. His mother appeared to him, looking sad. She said, "Why did you give me away, Obinna?" Obinna woke up with his heart pounding. He started to feel guilty about what he had done. He missed his mother, and now he realized he had made a terrible mistake. Night after night, his mother's spirit came to him in his dreams. She told him, "You must tell the truth, or you will never find peace." The people in the village were curious. They wondered how Obinna had suddenly become so rich. They started to ask him questions, but he was too scared to tell them the truth. Obinna lied to his friends, telling them the money came from a lucky deal. But every time he lied, he felt worse. The dreams continued, and his mother's spirit became more and more upset. She whispered to him, "You cannot run from what you have done." Obinna couldn't sleep at night. He started to avoid the villagers because he didn't want to face their questions. As the days passed, Obinna began to lose weight. The guilt was too heavy, and even though he had all the money he could ever want, he felt miserable. One night, after another visit from his mother's spirit, Obinna made a decision. He couldn't live with the guilt anymore. He had to confess. Obinna gathered the villagers in the town square. His hands shook as he began to speak. "I have something to tell you," he said. "I became rich because I made a terrible deal. I traded my mother's life for wealth," Obinna confessed. The villagers gasped in shock. The people were horrified by Obinna's confession. They couldn't believe that he had done something so awful. They began to whisper among themselves. The village elders called a meeting. They decided that Obinna's wealth was cursed. No one wanted anything to do with his money. Obinna was left all alone. The villagers refused to visit him or accept his gifts. He had all the money in the world, but no one wanted to be near him. That night, Obinna's mother appeared again in his dreams. She said, "Now they know the truth, but the price must still be paid." Weird things began to happen around Obinna's house. Doors slammed by themselves, and cold winds blew through the rooms. Obinna was frightened. One evening, Obinna saw a dark shadow moving through his house. He felt a chill run down his spine. The shadow started whispering to Obinna, telling him that the time was coming. He didn't know what it meant, but he was scared. Obinna started feeling ill. His body felt weak, just like his mother before she died. The villagers noticed that Obinna was looking sick. Some of them felt sorry for him, but others believed he was paying the price for his terrible deal. Rumors spread through the village that Obinna's wealth was cursed. No one dared go near his house, and they warned their children to stay away. One night, Obinna had the worst dream yet. His mother's spirit appeared, and she was angry. "You cannot escape the price of betrayal," she said. A strange star fell from the sky that night, and some villagers took it as a sign that something terrible was going to happen. People in the village began to avoid Obinna even more. They were afraid that his bad luck would spread to them. Obinna noticed a strange mark on his hand. It looked like a black stain, and it wouldn't wash off. Every day, the mark on Obinna's hand grew larger. He felt weaker and weaker, and the shadow in his house grew bolder. One last time, Obinna's mother appeared in his dream. This time, she said nothing. She only looked at him with sadness in her eyes. Obinna knew that his time was running out. He could feel the life draining from him. In a moment of desperation, Obinna ran to the village elders, begging them to help him lift the curse. But the elders shook their heads. "This is the price you must pay. No one can save you now," they said. Obinna returned to his big, empty house. It felt colder and darker than ever before. That night, strange noises filled the house: footsteps, whispers, and the sound of a door creaking open. Obinna shivered as the temperature in the house dropped. He could see his breath in the air, even though it was a warm night. The shadow returned, and this time, it didn't whisper. It stood over Obinna, watching him. The black mark had now spread across his entire body. He felt like he was fading away. The villagers awoke the next morning to find Obinna's house silent. No one dared go near it. When they finally went to check on Obinna, they found his house empty. He was gone. The room where Obinna had slept was cold, and the windows were covered in frost. But there was no sign of him anywhere. Days later, news spread through the village that Obinna had been found dead in the forest. No one knew how he got there. The villagers declared that Obinna's wealth was tainted. They refused to touch his money or take any of his possessions. Obinna's once grand house was left to rot. No one dared go inside, and it soon became overgrown with weeds. The villagers told the story of Obinna's terrible choice to their children as a warning. They said, "Greed can never bring true happiness.